Damian, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Let's get it going.
Yes, let's do that. We met a few months ago, and you were still working full time at winemakers, creating some amazing things. And you exited in May this year, and I watched your transformation in the last few months. It's been remarkable.
Thank you.
I read your posts. I certainly love engaging with that. I love what you do. I love what you're creating, and I would like to share it with our audience today.
No,
So let's take it away.
no, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's really exciting to be here and to speak to your audience. I'm Damian. I'm a brand strategist and a customer experience and leadership consultant. I'm also the co-founder of A Single Piece, which is a contemporary art gallery and creative collective in Surrey Hills, and the creator of the Experience Compass. And I work with brands all around the world to help them connect better with their consumers, connect better their teams together, connect their consumers better together, and actually create experiences that create memory and meaning. And I've had the good fortune to work with some amazing brands over my career, including brands like Adidas, Karl Lagerfeld, Raf Simons, Yohji Yamamoto. And for me, it's just always about creating experiences because I believe we live in a world where connection is becoming much harder. We're all feeling disconnected. We're all feeling like we can't truly create meaning. We live on autopilot. We don't necessarily live the lives that we always wanted to live. We end up sort of getting on this treadmill and just having trouble getting off. So for me, I'm starting to shift a lot more into working with leaders and particularly individuals and how do they redesign their life? How do they become more present, more connected to themselves and their own experiences? And so that whether you want to be a better parent or a better leader or a better friend or just a better person, you want to feel a little bit more fulfilled. That's the work I'm starting to do now. And I'm getting a lot out of that because my ultimate goal is to create a world where we're all connected and we're all living lives where we feel like we're contributing a lot and we creating meaning for ourselves because look, we're not here for a long time. We only get one shot at this. So you want to actually create the life that you want to live. So that's my whole mandate. That's what I get out of bed in the morning. And that's what drives me in everything that I do.
Beautifully said, because I wanted to ask you a question about what transpired, that shift and that transition, but you've already answered it beautifully. I mean, it's a big job.
Mm.
I think it's the pure art of connecting all the dots together. I don't know many people that nailing it across all the pillars, professional and personal and parenthood and the overall spiritual and the whole fulfillment part. But I think you're on that quest and that journey of putting it together for us, and I think it's beautifully said as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So from connection, if we'll flip the coin,
Mm-hmm.
on the other side is disconnection. So you've said the disconnection defines both businesses and cultures right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I agree with you. Where are you seeing the most, and what does reconnection look like in practice?
I'm seeing a lot of disconnection just on the individual level. I think collectively we have all these systems in place where we feel like we're connecting. We work together on teams or we've got friends or we've even got family. But when we actually think about it individually, we are disconnecting. We're disconnecting from ourselves, which I think is the biggest problem. And that starts to trickle on and have a sort of a downwind effect because in the corporate environment, if you're disconnected from yourself, then it's hard to connect with your teams, which means it's hard to connect with your customers. And then it just keeps rolling in that direction. And I think that's caused, as I said, by the fact that we now live lives on autopilot effectively. We give over ourselves to the machine because we're just going through life mentally full all the time. And it's difficult for us to stop and to really be present. I've said it many times that presence is one of the biggest problems facing society today because we're just not there. And then that just becomes difficult when you're trying to build teams or trying to build cultures or environments and trying to create experiences inside businesses as well as inside families. To be honest, like that sort of disconnection is not very obvious. It's not like you're it's not a really obvious disconnection because you're still physically present, which I think a lot of people have confused presence for. You might be in the room, you might be in the meeting room, you might be at the dining table, but you're not actually there, and your contribution lacks as a result because you're disconnected. So I want people to realize that and to acknowledge that and know that it's not a huge problem that you can't change and work on. and the results are amazing. The results in just the way you see the world, the way you connect, and the relationships you end up having, whether that be with your team or your family, are really transformative to how you live.
What do you think are those signals when people can feel disconnected? How would they know?
Uh, I mean, one of the easiest and most common ones is when that you sort of have that experience where you're like, oh, I don't remember getting to work this morning, or you look up, you're sitting on the bus on a commute, and you look up and you're like, oh, I almost missed my stop because I just wasn't there, or you realize someone's been talking to you and you've just forgotten about it, or you say, where does the day go? Where does the year go? You know, what are we now in the end of October, and people will be saying like, I can't believe it's almost Christmas and it's coming around again, and Black Friday's coming, and all this sort of stuff. Like, I think it's that's a pretty obvious sign that there's elements of your life that you're not present for. That loss of time is probably the most obvious one. But then
I
also
can't
there's
say how many times it happened to me.
yeah,
And
I
I
mean,
arrived at the destination and I had no idea how I got there.
people do it all the time. You'd be really surprised, and that's pretty obvious. Like that's if that's happening a lot, then I can probably see that there's other elements and other areas in your life where you're disconnecting. So how can you be expected to create experiences for your customers where you want to connect with them if you're not even there yourself? But then on the personal side, how can you expect other people to connect with you if you're not there?
Do you know, I've read a study, as you were saying that, I just remembered, I don't know the many details of it, but they interviewed people and they put them in a room and they had to sit there without their phones for about 10 to 15 minutes, or they were offered to give them some sort of a shock, obviously not an electric shock, but I don't know. And people opted in to that shock, whatever they did, rather than sitting in the room with
Mm,
their thoughts by themselves with zero distractions
mm,
for 10 to 15 minutes. It is remarkable that
mm.
we lost that ability. I don't know if you've ever had it, but we lost that ability to be comfortable with our thoughts
Yeah,
without looking
absolutely.
at the screens, without scrolling, without swiping.
Yeah. And it's ironic that sort of, there's that fear of disconnection. Like, so you need to have your device, and you'd rather take a shock than lose your device, but it's actually having the opposite effect. It's actually disconnecting you more. And then there's other bigger impacts, like we look at the idolization of busyness and how it's like, I've got to be connected. I don't want to miss out. I've got to keep working. I've got to keep checking
It's
emails.
true.
I've got to be present. I've got to be in these emails. I've got to be sort of seen, because we live in a society that's confused busyness with worth and busyness with value, uh, where it's not like it's not something you want to aspire to because it's not actually an end goal. I mean, whoever wants to be busy as their sort of goal. And I often make a joke, like as a kid, like you'd never said you wanted to be busy, but yet that seems to be the thing that we answer all these questions. How are you today, Anna? Yeah, I'm busy, busy.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
the badge of honor.
Yeah, you must be important. You've been
Yeah.
busy,
Oh God,
which
yes.
is strange.
Yes, agree. It's a very strange concept. I want to circle back. We'll have time later on about this because there were very sad posts on LinkedIn this week about people sharing their personal stories that they lost their personal friends to some tragedies at a very young age, and all the lessons around that. So we'll might touch on it later,
Mhm.
but I want to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you. You worked with brands, big brands, and my question to you: what do you think these brands understand about design and storytelling that helps them create that emotional connection?
Those brands, like, and I think that it's about creation of meaning. They exist beyond product. They exist, across multiple areas, multiple streams, and a lot of the brands that you're referencing that you can think of, those kind of top of the tree brands like Nike and Apple, like they create meaning for people, or they enable them to create meaning in their lives. And I've said it before that today people value meaning above all else. You look at younger Gen Z, and I do a lot of work in helping businesses set up a strategy to how to engage with Gen Z. Like they want experiences above all else. Like 70% of the Gen Z want experiences because experiences are how we create meaning. That when you're present, you're having an experience and a connection, you're able to create meaning for yourself. And that's what people value. It's not so much your product. So those brands that you're referencing have many, many years of experience in helping people create meaning. you use the product to do something else. You use an Apple product to create your movie, or you use, those clothes, or if you're talking about a fashion brand, those clothes allow you to create your own image or to project a message to the world. Like that's what those things are enabling you to do. And I think that modern brands are starting to realize this, which is good, and starting to shift back. And we're starting to see this kind of shift to what I call an experience economy and a meaning economy, rather than just from straight up sales. So it's like, how do I create, how do I change my store from being just a place where I sell to being almost like a portal to meaning? So people come in, and whether that's a digital store or a physical store, people come in and they have meaning, and they're able to create these experiences that are meaningful for them. And those brands that we look up to and the brands that we idolize, and those sort of, they are very good at doing that. And I think that's what a lot of people overlook. Like they just look at their products, or they look at the quality of the products, but it's actually the feelings that they've created, which is nothing new when you think about it in terms of marketing and brand building, but it's something that we've kind of forgotten when it's all about conversions and metrics, and let's get as many people through and increase the click-through rates. And we tend to focus too much on that sort of performance stuff, which is very easy to show validation, again, show busyness. I've got this many people coming through looking at the store, and therefore I'm converting this sort of percentage. Like, but that's not, but who's buying it, and what are they doing with it, and how are they creating meaning? That's the stuff that I want to sort of encourage more people to look at. And I'm doing a free webinar next week on why meaning matters more than metrics, because it's such an important thing to remind people of. It's what we create, or what we should be creating as people. Like, we want to create meaning for other people, whether that's through your business or through yourself. Like that should be the goal.
I saw you posted about this webinar. So for everyone's listening and tuning in live, it's next Friday at 1 p.m., I
Correct.
believe.
You're correct.
And you can register it on LinkedIn. I think you pinned it into your featured section.
It is there, yeah.
But to add to that, I'll definitely register for this because I can do it after the Spotlight Friday. But to add to that, I traveled to Shanghai in August for the retail study tour, and I saw that all in action, the whole experiential retail, the Anfu Road. I don't know if you've ever visited that. It's the hippiest road in the fashion street in Shanghai, and Adidas opened the store there a few months ago. And I think when we were there in August, I think the store was opened in May. And that's all about experiential retail. You can print your own T-shirt with any print and any wording you wanted to. They had the printer right there. You can add any prompts you wanted to your shoes. It was absolutely on steroids. The experience was extraordinary, and it was buzzing with people. And I can't even imagine the dwell time in that store because no one was in a rush to leave.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was about on average about 30 minutes, which is impossible to get.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that I've done a lot of work across Asia, particularly in Korea and Japan, and you
Yes.
see that time and time again. You see that the store becomes the portal to meaning, and those countries tend to have a very highly developed delivery and online system, and the sort of the purchase happens later. And it's not necessarily about having to have the store as a that sort of disconnected channel strategy where it's like, I've got to convert people when they walk into the store, and I've got to use every square meter to show as much product as I possibly can, and basically have my entire website visible. You see this shift towards this experience creation model, and you actually start to see it being adopted or being sort of embraced by the bigger brands from other countries. You look at brands like Gentle Monster being the prime example, but you look at other brands like Born to Stand Out, and that the way that they've created their business is completely built around creating experiences for people, and it's about nothing else. And so it kind of is strange when you speak to brands locally who would look at their retail and go, well, look at how many products can I show you, when it's actually about how much meaning can I create, because that's what's important. It's how do you sort of integrate it in a way that people want to come back. And like you said, people come in and they seek it out. And again, we look at that, that Gen Z demographic in particular, like, and their preference for physical retail as a way to touch and feel and experience the brand. I was chatting to someone yesterday who has a brand that was doing B2B clothing sales, and actually just ended up getting so many requests for people to come to the warehouse to experience the product and just touch it, that ended up opening a store just to have that same experience. So it's kind of
Oh, that's beautiful.
exactly what people want. They want the meaning. They want that disconnect. They want that connection, because maybe subconsciously we realize that we're lacking it. So I want to come in. I want to have, be welcome into a space to feel it's surprised. I mean, I talk a lot about the power of surprise, and it's in that webinar next week. It's key. When you're surprised, you're made instantly present. It triggers something neurologically in your brain that makes you present, changes how you feel, and you record it differently in your memory as a result, and that then creates meaning, and creates memories that you cling to. And like you said, I've got similar stories from stores I've been to around the world where I talk about it. It's just because they did something different, because they were
Yeah.
focused on that meaning creation.
Well, your post, I think, yesterday, and I love the photo of that dog in the Gentle Monster store in Korea, I think it was. It's captivating. I remember walking into the store. You just you feel surprised, but
Yeah.
pleasantly surprised. You don't want to leave because you want to understand what is the meaning of all
Mm.
this, because it's just there is so much space, and it's so beautifully curated, and it's so beautifully laid out, and there are it just very well done.
No, exactly. And it doesn't have to be, and this is the secret, it doesn't have to be incredibly huge. Like, I mean, the General Monster take it to the extreme, but like the example I shared yesterday with the jaywalking label from India, who had the power lines as their clothing rack. It's subtle, but it really creates an interesting visual effect that you can't help but look away. You can't help but sort of connect with, and especially when you then realize that it does carry on into the actual collection itself and what's printed on the shirts. Oh, similarly, I'm working with a brand locally who is looking at building out a store that the entire interior of the store is painted white, but all the products are black and black only. So every single product in the store
Wow.
has to be black. Homewares and fashion in particular, but everything in the environment is painted white. So it creates that experience when you walk in. You're like, "What? This is kind of not what I'm expecting to see. How do I then sort of how do I feel about that? Is it exciting?" And then you start to get into emotion, and that then you're off and running in terms of the creation of meaning.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your framework that links leadership, employee, and customer experience.
Mhm.
So, why is alignment across these three layers so critical, and what happens when one of them breaks?
It's super critical, and I think that I've been doing a lot of work recently in LX, which I call the leadership experience, and I've got a program which I work with leaders through called the Future Self Lab to help them reconnect, become a more present person, more present leader, and actually to redesign the leadership experience as a whole. Because when you actually think about it, it makes perfect sense. Like, if you're not connected and present as a leader, then you can't expect your team to be like that, and therefore you can't expect to connect to your customers. I think we end up being too focused on the CX end of it, and then look, some businesses then go into the employee part of the experience and actually create more meaningful employee experiences. Beyond just ping pong tables and free beer, like it's creating experiences for employees that make them empowered, connected, and guided. I use the analogy ECG, like a heart rate monitor for your business. Like, because if you don't have empowered, connected, guided teams, then you're never going to have connected customers, and you're never going to have empowered, connected, and guided teams if you don't have leaders who are basically on the right track to their leadership experience is key. And I use the analogy sometimes of an operating system, your internal operating system, because one of the things that leaders are often responsible for is the operating systems in our businesses. What CRM we're using, what e-commerce platform we're using. You're looking at bigger providers, and you're upgrading operating systems all the time, and it's part of your remit. But we never actually stop and consider from a leadership point of view, what's your own personal interior operating system? How's it functioning? Do you need to upgrade it? Is it still the same one that you've been running for 10 years? And especially now with the advancement of technology, the rise of AI, and just the changing nature of the workforce, whether they're at home and their age, and how it's sort of shifting dynamically. The leaders are actually running to catch up with where current society and current environment is, and they're just still operating on outdated operating systems. So how can I help them to improve that? Because that's the foundation. you're looking at, to use a building a house, right? You got the architects and the people sort of setting the plan, and then you've got the builders building the house, and then you've got the customer living in it in the end. And if you don't have anyone there at the start actually deciding what it's going to be, then the builders are just basically building what they reckon is going to work. So it's a journey. It needs to be all connected up.
I love your analogy with building the house because you're absolutely right. I talk about that foundation very often because, especially in the fast evolving world that we're living in now, digitally and technologically, and from AI point of view, it's very easy to chase the shiny objects and the shiny technology, but we need to go back to the foundation. Do we have the strong enough foundation to support it, to integrate it, to facilitate it, so when all the customers move in, that they're actually
Yeah.
going to be delighted about the entire experience. So
Exactly. And that's why they end up getting that sort of very cookie cutter experience, because the builders, the staff just have to just do what they know will work. They put up the four walls, they put up the roof, they make sure it's painted and carpeted, and let's go on to the next one. But the customer's actually not going to have what they really want because you don't have the piece at the start. So yeah, I think that's a big shift that needs to happen now in the overall experience chain, because I mean, it's wonderful to see that customer experience is evolving beyond straight up call centers, and how do we sort of handle complaints, and how can we push into much more making the whole experience of a customer's life better. And regardless of where your brand plays in that, or where you play as an individual in that, there's a small role to play in the customer's overall life, and that needs to be your focus. It can't just necessarily be on, I'm only interested when a customer wants to engage with me, make a complaint, take out a home loan or something, make it as smooth as possible. I actually want to be an active participant in their life more broadly, so that they could, again, create meaning, create nice experiences, and then come back and we can have a relationship. And I think that for me, it's that value exchange rather than value extraction. How do we have that ongoing back and forth, and how do we give as well as take as a business? We can't just be taking all the time. And if you have leaders that are set in place to actually empower their team to create an exchange, and to enable them, like, to not be so focused on metrics, to not be so focused on like the straight up returns, to be looking at other metrics and other KPIs that can help, rather than just sort of like how many things have you sold today, or how many people came to the website. Like, how could we sort of look at that sort of value exchange in new ways? And I've seen some really interesting examples of businesses that have looked at the KPI, sorry, not the KPI, the P&L structure, and how can you look at non-financial P&Ls to look at this exchange model, so that you can actually show that the investment, the financial investment, even though it might not necessarily return straight up dollars, returns sentiment or returns meaning to a business, because that has a value. And increasingly in today's world, it has a much larger value than it has had previously. And it's important for future growth strategies to have that there.
I like how you framed it around value exchange and not value extraction. It's the two-way street. It's
Mm,
not we design the product, we sell it to you. Therefore, you have to come and purchase from us because we decided that this is good for you.
yeah.
Just obviously this is it's a good process to
Mm,
have, but it needs to, there is the, when the exchange exists and the whole loop of the feedback that gets collected from customers, then I think then it's turning into a beautiful business and a beautiful journey for the customers.
absolutely.
You often talk about slowing down to create experiences that matter. How can leaders find balance between performance and presence
Mm.
in the environment that's driven by urgency?
Yeah, look, funny that. Like, I think, look, the more and more you get into an unbalance or an imbalance between presence and performance, like the performance is going to suffer. Like, it's not that you can ignore it. I think that too many people see that sort of presence and connection as almost like a vitamin rather than a medicine. It's something I know I've got to take, but I'm not really sick, so I don't I'll forget about it for now, rather than sort of, no, I need to take it today, or I'm gonna be really ill. So it is like a vitamin, and it's seen like a vitamin, but it's not. It's actually a medicine. You need to be taking it today. You need to be fixing this, because all of a sudden it's going to turn around. And I've spoken to a lot of leaders through my program where they're starting to feel irrelevant. They're starting, or they might have been let go from their role, or made redundant, or they're looking for a shift in their career, and they're realizing that it's a completely different landscape now. And they've been caught behind, and it needs to shift. And I think that too many businesses are focused on that urgency, that sort of today not tomorrow view, which I understand completely, and I understand that focus. But at the same time, like, do you want your business to do well today, or do you want your business to still be here in like 4 or 5 years time? And that's a decision you have to make. And therefore, if your decision is to just get through today, then that's fine. That's your prerogative, and that's your decision to make. But if you actually want to build a business and grow it and increase it and create something that grows, then you need to start looking further down the line than just immediate transactions. So I think that it's brave and it's scary and it's hard for some leaders to make that decision, to balance that out and that presence. But yeah, just from a personal point of view, you look at burnout, and I think it's more than 80% of the Australian workforce say they experience burnout, and burnout's really common when you're on this autopilot, constant driving sort of situation. You lose your ability to adapt, which is your creativity. It gets away from you. You end up sort of just, nose down on the hamster wheel, and then all of a sudden you look up and someone from HR is knocking on the door saying it's time to go. And that's a problem. So how can I help people to reestablish that, to reconnect with that, and realize that I need to be present, I need to be connected, I need to be evolving and adapting as the business adapts. Otherwise, I won't be here anymore.
Yes, absolutely. We have a couple of minutes left. I would love to touch on your experience compass.
Cool.
I think it's beautifully framed. It's beautifully explained. I spent a bit of time on your website. I like how you curated it as well. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the experience compass is a system I developed a few years ago, because whenever I would walk into a business, I was always being asked for a map. Give me a map. Tell me how we're going to get there. What's the strategy? Which path are we all following? And the problem with a map is that it shows you the most direct path between 2 points. It's often paved by other people in the past, so it's something that's been done before. And the problem is that if you're already on autopilot and I give you the path, you just keep walking on autopilot down the path. And then in sort of further terms, from a team point of view, when you put or expect all of your teams to walk down the same path, they end up fighting for real estate on that, which means they have to sort of put up defenses, which means you create silos. And you don't acknowledge the fact that, like, say, your digital team and your retail team might be different. They're serving different customers. They're creating different experiences. They need to go in different directions. And for me, it's evolved quite a lot more into a model that I've just recently finished writing a book about, because it's what I actually use as the framework for helping people redesign their life. Because in life, we feel like we've got to walk down a path, and so we have a destination in mind where we want to get to, whatever that might be, in terms of how we want to live our life or what we want to run for a business. And you need to give yourself permission to be able to move left, move right, move backwards, move forwards, like an explorer. So you've got a compass which will always point you towards your destination, but it allows you to go in whatever direction works best for you. Sometimes, and it's always about an internal and an external alignment in your personal, how you feel, what gives you energy, what takes energy. And in terms of your internal systems, what gives you meaning, what sort of system you have set up within yourself to help you. And so you can say, like, well, right now I need to focus on my family because that's going to fill me. And if I don't do that, eventually that's going to become a bigger issue, which will affect other elements of my life. So it's okay to head in that direction for a little while, knowing that I've got my compass and I can sort of head back towards my overall goal eventually. You never get lost that way. Because I think that we end up in a situation, many of us in an individual situation, where you're going, I have to keep walking towards my destination or I'm not achieving. And so even if like your internal energy is feeling low or you're starting to get tired and you need to work on it, if that's pulling you away from where you need to be heading, people don't do it. And that just doesn't make sense. Like, that's just not how we are designed as people. That's not how we're designed as humans. Like, you need to go or give yourself permission. And so when I run the experience compass for individuals or brands, it's about empowering you to go in the direction that you need to go to actually get to where you need to get to. And through the gallery, we're evolving that into, helping children to sort of map their future and helping parents to sort of work together, because, this lack of creativity that I talk about, Creativity is our ability to adapt in the modern world, and it's falling off really quickly in kids as they get into these systems, as they get into school, as they sort of, have it taken away from them by machines and devices. We want to be able to give them back and give the parents the tools to be able to sort of navigate this and how to sort of take the direction or allow the children to go in the way that they need to go to get the most out of them. So for me, it's a great system, and it works quite well. And I've been really proud to be able to, share it with people and really see some like true life transformations. It's been really moving to be sitting in rooms with people and helping them work through this and seeing like a real empowerment. It's not what society says, but it's what you feel. And I think that's most important. And that allows people to really create the lives that they want to live, because I'm a firm believer that the life you want is hiding in the life you have, and you've just got to unlock it and get on with it.
The life you live is the life you hide, or the life you want is the life you hide.
Well, effectively, like we have, like, it's inside you, it's there, it. And a lot of people I talk to, they, especially when they feel, away from the glare of what others might think, or, in the privacy of a workshop that we might be doing, like they express all these hidden things. And it's like, well, why don't you do that? Because you can see the change in the face, like they light up. It's like, I love doing this and it gives me so much power and energy, but I never do it. And I'm like, well, why? And it's like, oh, I've got to be, working, or I've got to be doing this and doing that. But the benefit of actually exploring that a little bit more and filling it in, even if it seems unrelated to what you do, is immense. And you can really start creating these like experiences where you become more present and, more connected, and you just see the world differently. I often say that we go through life looking at the world but never seeing it. And all of a sudden, by sort of making sure that you do what you need and sort of feeding your soul, you can create all these amazing experiences where you see the world in new ways.
Incredible. You've given me so many nuggets of insights that I would love to unpack even more. And we've covered so many aspects. I feel like we can talk for hours. Maybe we should.
We could.
About the gallery and your webinar and the experience compass that you've created. There are so many incredible things. Damian's been such a wonderful and insightful conversation. You are such a deep thinker, and I would
Thank
call you
you.
a philosopher as well. But I enjoy our interaction immensely. We've caught up in person as well, and it was lovely to meet you. I'm yet to visit your art studio in Sydney, which I promise I will.
Mm-hmm.
And I look forward to many more conversations with you. It's been fantastic.
Likewise.
So thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much.
much. Thanks everyone who joined us. We appreciate you as always. Have a lovely Friday. And if you're having a long weekend, have a great one. We'll see you next week.